welcome everybody to another edition of Political Power Ranker. Chris Berg here, Director of Political Content for Nexstar affiliates across the country, and my fellow cohort in crime when it comes to polling, Spencer Kimball, Director of Polling at Emerson College Polling out in Boston. Hey, Spencer, good to see you another week.
It is always good to see you, Chris Berg, even though you're in a bit warmer area of the country than I am.
I'm in a secret location in Arizona, and that's where we're coming to you from, and we're going to talk about Arizona. It's warm here, it's beautiful, it's sunny, and I love being in Arizona. So, Spencer, we've got there's four of us here going to be talking today, two political consultants that have agreed to join us. Tim Rosales, Tim is a Republican consultant that has done a lot of work in Arizona, is based out in California and Sacramento, and Stacey Pearson, who is here in Arizona and has done a lot of Democratic work here for candidates for the past several years, and two experts who are going to join us. So thank you, Tim and Stacey, for joining us. But before we get going, let's talk numbers. Spencer, you've got a new poll in Arizona, big governor's race, bunch of congressional races, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, so we were able to poll this race this week, Sunday through Tuesday or so, and we talked to about 850 voters and got a chance to collect that data via text messages and online panels.
And drum roll, please. What are you showing in this big governor's race out here from the primary for the Republicans?
Yeah, let's jump into that Republican primary because there's a lot of moving parts here, and I'm going to be interested to hear Tim and Stacey's opinion on what's happening on the ground, because we see Andy Biggs, the congressman who came into this late after Taylor Robson, who had been the nominee 4 years ago. They kind of split that Trump endorsement over the last couple of months, and we see Biggs with a big lead here. David Schweikert, the congressman, just jumped into the race, and he's trailing pretty far behind, so it kind of raised an eyebrow of where he sees a pathway to victory. But the early numbers here show Big with an advantage going into that Republican primary, which is still not until August. So we still have some time, but he comes out of the gate pretty strong.
Comes out of the gate with 50%, even though you've got a pretty, sizable undecided still there. Surprise you?
The key there is that Trump endorsement. When he was with Robson, she would probably doing better. But when he splits that endorsement with Biggs, that gives Biggs a big jump into this race. And it looks like Robson is kind of falling behind pretty quickly.
Let's bring in our political experts. Tim, let's start with you. You saw these numbers. What's your first reaction? Biggs right at 50%. That's a pretty good number to get into the fall with.
Absolutely. If I'm in the Biggs campaign, I'm cheering, and I'm going to put this number out everywhere. I'm going to put it out to donors. I'm going to get it as far and wide as I can. The Robeson campaign really has to, take a look and retool some of what they're doing. Now, certainly, I don't think that means game over necessarily for the Robeson campaign, and Schweikert has to look at, okay, what is my role here in this race, really being what was a two-person race and now a three-person race, and kind of acting as a little bit of a spoiler for Robeson. So I think there's a lot of, I think, conversations internally going to be happening with Robeson and Schweikert folks, but for Biggs, they're going to be, trumpeting this, as far as they can, and they should.
So, Stacey, you're here in Arizona. How are the Democrats looking at this number? You've got a Democratic incumbent with Katie Hobbs. So this is her first cut of the numbers that she's going to see too from Emerson. So what do you think the first takeaway is for that team?
Oh, I think we're going to be sending Christmas cards to the Schweikert campaign because when you really evaluate Biggs' record and the economy that we have in the state under Donald Trump, voters are going to want Katie Hobbs back in office. And so I really think Schweikert has chipped away significantly at Karen Taylor Robeson's numbers. She was 4 years ago an alternative to the Trump endorsed candidate, which was Kari Lake. And then she tacked to the right to get out of the primary this time. And I don't think voters are going to forgive her for that switch in positions.
Spencer, we got more numbers. Let's look at those.
Yeah, so let's jump to that head-to-head matchups in the general election. And you can see that the governor Hobbs, Katie Hobbs, she sits right around that 44% number against all of her Republican opponents. I think the key here is that we're seeing a competitive race, but they're all, there's about 13, 14% that are undecided. So I think as Hobbs goes for reelect, regardless of the Republican nominee, the voters haven't really focused in, and that's why we see this high number of undecideds. That's going to change over the course of the year, and we'll see which directions they break.
Tim, I want to just go to you first on this one. So coming out of Virginia, a blowout in New Jersey that no one expected, the socialist trend, and the denouncing of the Como family legacy in New York, Prop 50. There seems to be some headwinds. At least we're talking about potential headwinds for the Republican Party in heading into 26. You see numbers like this. What does that tell you?
Well, I think there's always an alarm bell with some of the things that you outlined there, Chris. But I would say from these numbers, if I'm the Katie Hobbs campaign, and I would not be overly confident of what I'm seeing in terms of these of where her numbers are at, and then also the head-to-head numbers. This is a very competitive race, and it will remain a very competitive race. The Hobbs campaign is going to have the biggest crowning moment of her governorship right now is vetoes, is what she's not doing, right? And so she has to get beyond that, and it's the same trouble that Trump has, and some of the others when we're looking at the national perspective. But Hobbs is going to have to figure out and articulate what they can do, because right now I think voters on both sides are looking for people who are going to do what they say. And so particularly in Arizona, whether it's on the economy, which certainly is top of mind, and other issues, that's something that I think that the Hobbs campaign is going to have to articulate if they're going to put themselves in a position to be successful. And it's good news for Republicans because they've got a window of opportunity.
Stacey, what do you think of Tim's thoughts?
So I certainly think that Democrats need to articulate what we're going to do. Katie Hobbs, though, has always done what she said she was going to do. If Biggs gets out of this primary, we're going to have set up a contest between an election denier and the woman who was Secretary of State that held the line against the Trump administration overturning the results of the 2020 election. So this wasn't just a veto. She played offense, and she has strengthened election security. She has held the line on protecting mail-in voting. She has restored funding for children with disabilities in a state and in an era where there is no money to spare. And the vetoes that she can point to are some of the weirdest pieces of legislation that Arizona's ever seen. And we have the market on crazy. I mean, at one point, our legislature was trying to re-legalize silencers. And you know what's worse than a mass shooting? Not hearing one start. And so her vetoes really were in the best interest of the state. And she's got a record to run on.
But should it be this close? I mean, I know it's a year out, but should it be this close if everything you're saying is kind of resonating with voters?
Oh, absolutely. She's looking at an 8 or 9 point Republican voter registration advantage, just sheer voter registration numbers. And so for it to be this close is a testament to how many Republicans and independents in Arizona go, hey, she's doing a great job. She's doing a fine job. Don't upset the apple cart, and keep a lid on this legislature that has tried to roll back mail-in voting and ballot drop boxes, ways people have voted in Arizona for decades.
Spencer, you've heard Tim and Stacey just talk a little bit about this. Anything in the crosstabs that jumps out at you that you can kind of clear up or kind of put more context to what they're saying?
Sure. I think the best one to look at here would be on the racial divide, looking at white voters and Hispanic voters. And one thing that we noticed here was that the Hispanic vote kind of stayed the same between 24 and what we're seeing now. There was the big talk out, what we saw last couple weeks ago in the off-year elections, where that Hispanic vote had switched. But it looked like the Hispanic vote in Arizona stayed pretty consistent, Democrat by about 20 points. It was the white vote that we see different from 24, where that white vote went heavy for Trump by about 15 points. Now Hobbs has cut into that lead. Now there's a big chunk of undecided voters there, but that's where she can make up a lot of ground because 70% of the electorate is white. And if she is able to keep that into single digits, that's a pathway to victory holding on to that Hispanic vote as well. We'll see if those numbers hold, though, as this campaign unfolds. And that's what's going to happen. When I see these numbers, it tells me that the voters haven't really tuned in yet. And now that they're going to tune in, you're going to hear the arguments from both campaigns. And we're going to see some numbers move, I'm sure, over the next 10 months as these campaigns make their argument of why they should get elected or reelected.
Stacey, I see you shaking your head in affirmative. Those numbers, you like those numbers right now, a year out?
Absolutely. And to Spencer's point, a block of suburban East Valley, Maricopa County, suburban women, white women, high concentration of college educations, many, many members, tens of thousands of members of the Church of Jesus Christ in Latter-day Saints, known more commonly as the Mormon vote. Those folks have crossed over again and again for the Democrat in the statewide election. They voted for Kyrsten Sinema. They voted for Mark Kelly. They voted for Katie Hobbs. They voted for Adrian Fontes as Secretary of State. They voted against Sheriff Joe, who invented this crazy round them up, kick them out approach to immigration. Those voters remain registered Republicans, but they are Christians in the truest wash the feet sense of the word. And they do not tolerate this rhetoric and racism and, quite honest, the family separations, this kind of evil approach to moving people out of our country.
Tim, we talked about the Hispanic vote yesterday. We wanted to see these crosstabs. Now that you see them from a Republican perspective, where we took I said we, I'm not sure why I said we, but the Republican Party took a shellacking up in New Jersey just a couple weeks ago in reference to Hispanics. What do these numbers tell you in Arizona?
Well, I think the numbers tell us a couple things. Number one is that the Latino vote, just like what we have seen over the last couple of cycles, is not completely holden to the Democratic Party anymore, where it once used to be. And what we're seeing is not that they're going in droves to the Republican Party, but they are in play and they're movable. And so I think right now what they're seeing, particularly in terms of immigration, if you look at the immigration numbers, I think from the survey, the immigration numbers show that they are supportive of the number back where they were back in 2024, the same levels of support. Why? Because the president did what he said he would do on the issue of immigration. It wasn't a surprise to them. Now, on the issue of the economy, that's where we see a little bit of volatility there. The president, as they see it, and certainly whomever is in power, Governor Hobbs is going to have to articulate this as well, because she's the governor of Arizona, is what have they done on the economy compared to what they said that they would do. They have done what they've said on immigration, but they have not done, those in power, what they have said on the economy. And I think that's going to be kind of the key pivot point, not only for Latino voters, but also talking about those that Stacey talked about, the suburban women and others, is what is your due? And I think that the due part of it really is kind of the key that this election is going to come down to for both sides, and being able to articulate, hey, have we done what we said we will do? Trump's going to get credit for what he's done in certain places where he said he's done it, and he's going to have to take a hit where he hasn't done it. Hobbs is going to be the same way.
Well, we're going to have more on affordability and favorability in just a few moments. We're going to take a quick break. More to come here on Political Power Ranker. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Political Power Ranker. We're talking all things Arizona politics, 2026 governor's race, and beyond. One of the things that we want to address now are issues, and an issue that just basically swept the country here over the past 6-8 months and drove, a lot of people are saying, drove the decision making in the fall elections here in the off cycle in 25 was affordability. So Tim, talk to us a little bit about affordability, Arizona, and just the general feel of what is motivating voters right now. And what is that? Because it can mean different things to different people.
Sure, it absolutely can mean different things to different people. I think, if you look at kind of the the electorate, right? What does it mean to your working class? What does it mean to, your Latino voters? I think for those voters across that spectrum, you're talking about the basic prices of everyday materials. You're also looking at, for everyone, the price and cost of housing. That is, I think, going to be a key indicator that folks are looking at in terms of affordability. And also, don't forget, voters vote in their self-interest. So it can look differently, as you said, for every single voter. And they're going to look at, and 2024, I think, was really a good example of this, where they went to that issue because they perceived individual candidates were actually going to help them in where they're at. And so I think that going into 2026, it'll be a referendum on affordability, and that will look different for every individual. And they'll be basing that on, has their individual, their economic opportunity, their economic standing, the prices that they see every day, has that improved under whether it's a Republican or Democrat? And that, I think, is the challenge, particularly in Arizona.
Stacey, affordability in Arizona, what does that mean to voters here, especially Democratic voters?
Oh, the affordability question in Arizona is so complicated. I mean, we were the first one in the recession and the last one out. Our house prices crashed. And so an older voter, talking Gen X and older, we're excited that house prices are increased. I mean, most of the value, most of the wealth in the middle class in Arizona is in the home that you paid $85,000 for 10 years ago in the suburbs, or $150,000 for, and it's now worth $500,000. But that said, your kids who are graduating college can't live in their own neighborhoods. And so Governor Hobbs has been able to explain that in a way that voters understand. Katie Hobbs didn't study poverty. She was a Uber driver to make ends meet. And in Arizona, particularly when we had the highest foreclosure rates and some of the worst housing crash numbers, it resonates. She lost a house in the recession. She gets it. She's happy that her house is worth more than it was in 2010. And so she'll be able to talk to people from shared experiences.
Spencer, you've got another cut on issues that are important to folks here in Arizona. What does that look like?
Well, Arizona has always been a little different than the rest of the country because of being a border state. And so the issue of immigration has always been higher in our polling in Arizona than almost anywhere else. Now we see immigration coming down a little bit. And the big issue is the economy that is jumping up. So the economy's up about 7 points. Where it's really up is with the Hispanic voters. It's up to 40% amongst that group. The issue that's kind of off the table right now in Arizona is abortion. So our last poll a year ago, abortion was on the ballot and it was important to 14% of voters. Now it's 1% because it's been voted on and it's already moved over. So as we look at the issues going into this election cycle, housing affordability is still there around 10%, but it is the economy, and it seems as if immigration not necessarily has been solved, but it's been resolved to the point where people are moving on to other issues in their day.
In my time here, Stacey, I can attest, no one is talking about immigration issues to me. I'm not seeing it blasted all over the news here with ICE arrests and all the issues that are surrounding that dynamic. Can you speak to that, and why not? And what about the economy and the Hispanic population?
So Arizona's history is repeating itself, and we have been through this immigration crisis once before. Sheriff Joe, infamous toughest sheriff in America, put people in pink underwear and those antics. He invented these roundup techniques, and so Arizona has seen these tactics. We're not shocked by them. It was on a sheriff's department versus a federal agency, but what we're seeing is that the border crossings are down, and in Arizona, that makes a difference. There's no one sleeping in a border city hall. And so these are issues that matter to voters. The economy, though, I mean, we've got such a gig worker economy here. And when folks are not able to get the shifts that they got delivering Amazon packages 6 months ago, because people are consuming fewer items. They didn't buy Halloween costumes for their dogs. This discretionary spending impacts people's real lives. And so that bulge, the people who were picking up gig work to make ends meet, those voters are frustrated.
Tim, is it a good or a bad thing for a Republican candidate that immigration has fallen down on the importance scale?
I think it's a great thing because what it shows is that what President Trump campaigned on is what he actually did, and it's actually having effect. And as Stacey mentioned, you're seeing border crossings down. You're seeing the effectiveness of the president's actions. I think the question is going to be, going back to what Spencer had said on the economy and affordability, is who the voters in Arizona, who are the undecided voters, who they're going to assign that blame to of that economy, whatever the result is. And still, we've got, I mean, this is eons of time in politics, as we know, right? I mean, we're talking about this here in November, and the primaries in August. So there's loads of time on that, but I think that's really what it comes down to. But I think Republicans can point to the effectiveness, and certainly we're seeing that the Latino community is not necessarily offended by that. They are seeing the same results too, in terms of safer streets, in terms of being able to not have the number of border crossings, being able to get those individuals who've committed crimes out of this country. I think that's what they're pointing to. And I would say, Stacey, Gen X is not older voters.
Hey,
I heard that and I'm like, oh no, yeah.
I'm not getting any younger.
I know. I know.
Let's not talk about Gen X, because I'm not
Yeah,
in
let's
Gen X
leave that.
anymore. I am. Oh my goodness.
We judge age by brackets, 30
Yes,
to
there you go,
40,
there you
50
go.
to,
Yeah.
It's a range, range.
Spence, we got one more slide to talk about favorability.
Sure. This is important here because this is why I think the race is still wide open. When we look at the favorability of Katie Hobbs, she's at 44% favorable. And if you look, that's actually what her ballot test is at, 44%. The three Republican candidates, including Biggs, is fairly unknown. There's a third of voters that don't know much about this candidate. So it's going to be on both sides to try to define Biggs. Hobbs is going to try to define herself. But there's a lot of moving parts in that the voters don't know these candidates as well as some of the other candidates they've had a chance to learn about. So over the course of the 8-9 months till the primary and into the general, you're going to see both sides getting a chance, particularly the Democrats, a chance to define the Republican more. But obviously the Republicans are going to come after Hobbs and her record in office because her favorability, if she gets up to 50, that's obviously a concern for the right.
So, Tim, does Andy Biggs start just worrying about Katie Hobbs? I know even though he's got a primary, he's well ahead. Is that where he spends his money? He goes after her and just kind of ignores the rest?
I wouldn't if I was Biggs. What I would do is try to define myself in a way that can portray me as a leader for Arizona, because I think the big danger for Biggs is that Katie Hobbs is gonna focus completely on Biggs, make him as kind of the Arizona version of Trump, and really force that narrative, because I think that's probably, if she can define him before he defines himself, that's the setup that she would want, and I think her campaign would want, and certainly she's got the ability to do it a little sooner rather than later. Biggs has the challenge, and certainly these polling numbers are great for him in that he does still have a primary. He does have to compete against some candidates, and Robeson, who does have the ability to fund and to run a race, but really doing that two-step of being able to define himself from a statewide perspective before Hobbs can do that to him, and also making sure that he does come out on top of this primary.
DC, what does Katie Hobbs do now? She's a year out. Does she follow Tim's advice?
Oh, she's going to keep governing. She will keep vetoing terrible legislation. I think she will focus on defining to voters what she is going to do in her second term, and she's going to win.
Well, there you heard it, people. That's what's going to happen, according to Tim and Stacey. All right, we've got to take another quick break, but getting to our last segment, what everyone waits for every week is who Spencer says who's up and who's down. Wait for it because we got a couple interesting ones. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Political Power Ranker, talking all things Arizona. We've reached the segment of who's up and who's down. Spencer, who's up?
Well, let's take a look at what's up to begin with. And we start with the economy. Economic concerns are up in Arizona, and we'll see who's able to solve those problems for the voters. So the economy and economic concerns on the up. Also on the upside is a candidate, and that is Andy Biggs, the congressman. He's up in that primary poll. It was supposed to be a much more competitive race. We'll see if he's able to continue with that type of lead.
Well, he crossed 50% or got to 50%. That's pretty good. A year out. Spencer, who's down?
And down is his opponents in that Republican primary. As we see Taylor Robson and Schweikert, both in the race, especially David Schweikert. He's, single digits. Question is, what's his pathway to victory? And does Taylor Robson throw more money into the race and see if she can turn things around in the second time for the nomination?
Tim, let's start with you. We'll give Stacy the last word here. Tim, what do you think of Spencer's up and down? And do you agree or disagree?
Well, I agree. I mean, Andy Biggs is up. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I would say I think Governor Hobbs is down. I think she should be in a much stronger position than what she is at this point. I'm sure Stacy might disagree with that, but that's what I would give my up and my down to.
Stacy, we got a full-throated time frame for you to explain why Katie Hobbs is actually up.
We're in a red state. Every report that we were purple or blue was wrong. So in a state that has an 8-point Republican registration advantage, the fact that Katie Hobbs is leading in the clubhouse against folks that have been to Congress, that served in the state legislature, that built homes Arizonans are living in, these are well-known figures in Arizona. They may not know whether or not they're going to vote for them, but they certainly know these people exist. And Katie Hobbs is going to win. She's got the block of voters that crossed over from independent or Republican to support her, and they're not going anywhere.
Well, you've heard it here first. Arizona's a red state, and Katie Hobbs voters aren't going anywhere, says Stacy Pearson. Stacy, thank you very much for joining us for the first time. Tim, I appreciate you coming for the first time. Hopefully we can invite you back. Oh, we will invite you back. Hopefully you'll accept being part of Political Power Ranker. And everyone watching, thank you very much. Another edition will be coming next week where we're going to talk Nevada next week. So hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I think I did. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.